Sacrifice your money to strangers who have not earned it, proclaims the Sermon on the Mount, and sacrifice your love to enemies you hate. Sacrifice the values of both matter and spirit. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. But does the morality of sacrifice not contain some enormous hidden double standard? As Ayn Rand asks in Atlas Shrugged, and all further quotes will be from the novel unless I indicate otherwise. Quote, "Why is it moral to serve the happiness of others, but not your own? Why is it immoral to produce a value and keep it, but moral to give it away? And if it is not moral for you to keep a value, why is it moral for others to accept it? If you are selfless and virtuous when you give it, are they not selfish and vicious when they take it? Does virtue consist of serving vice? Is the purpose of those who are good self-immolation for the sake of those who are evil?" Close quote. Now, what is the Sermon on the Mount's answer to these questions? Well, to quote again from Atlas, the monstrance answer is no, the takers are not evil, provided they did not earn the value you gave them. It is not immoral for them to accept it, provided they are unable to produce it, unable to deserve it, unable to give you any value in return. Close quote. Why, for instance, do drug companies not have the right to sell their inventions to anyone eager to buy them? Because the companies invented them. Now, why do we, the public, through the FDA, have the right to dictate what drugs these companies can and cannot sell, how they have to research, test, manufacture, and label the drugs, what uses the drugs can be prescribed for, and who can purchase them? What gives us this incredible power? The fact that we didn't invent the drugs. Or why does an employee not have the right to invest all his income as he judges best for his old age? Because he earned the money. Why do we, the public, have the right to take part of his income, pool it into a so-called insurance scheme, and dole it out to whoever supposedly needs it? Because we didn't earn the money. Quote, "Such is the secret core of your creed, the other half of your double standard. It is immoral to live by your own effort, but moral to live by the effort of others. It is immoral to consume your own product, but moral to consume the product of others. It is the parasites who are the moral justification for the existence of the producers, but the existence of the producers is an end in itself." Close quote. Now, if you want just one contemporary example to fix in your mind the gruesome essence of the morality of sacrifice and what it does to self-esteem, consider America's response to 9/11. When the Twin Towers collapsed, many people in the Middle East danced in the streets. But others there, although sympathetic to the revelers, sought to hide the revelry from view. They worried that the attacks had gone too far this time, and that America would refuse to suffer such an outrage. They worried that our self-esteem was not completely strangled, and that their gloating would revive it. They worried about our indignation and our wrath. And there were some signs of this on the part of the American people. There was some anger and some desire for revenge. People wanted Bush to do something. Responding to the country's mood, the administration promised a campaign of shock and awe and the extraction of infinite justice. But then, there is no doubt, Bush asked himself, what would Jesus do? Tragically, it was one of the few questions to which Bush knows the answer. Operation Infinite Justice was renamed. Gone was the extraction of justice, replaced by the goal of bringing democracy to the Middle East, so that its inhabitants could elect whomever they wished, killers emphatically not excluded. a campaign of shock and awe did still materialize, but not in the way originally meant. Imagine the utter shock of the Islamic warriors and their numerous supporters when they realized that it was not U.S. bombs dropping on their heads, but packets of lentils, barley stew, biscuits, peanut butter, and strawberry jam, along with the message, "This is a food gift from the people of the United States of America." Imagine the awe they must have felt at their own power. They had attacked the Pentagon and toppled the Twin Towers, and this had brought them not U.S. soldiers bent on their complete destruction, but U.S. soldiers bent on rebuilding their hospitals and mosques and bringing them the vote. The young soldiers all the while dying in the process. We are proving to these people that the meek shall inherit the earth, and that blessed indeed are the poor in spirit. The power these killers feel is real. It is granted to them by the morality of sacrifice. Now, the Sermon on the Mount and all its variations through the centuries, Atlas Shrugged reveals, is a morality of evil and for evil. But it has a fatal flaw. It requires that its victims accept it. Quote, "I saw that the enemy was an inverted morality, and that my sanction was its only power. I saw that there comes a point in the defeat of any man of virtue when his own consent is needed for evil to win. I saw that I could put an end to your outrages by pronouncing a single word in my mind. I pronounced it. That word was no." This is the beginning of Ayn Rand's declaration of moral independence. To win one's moral independence, one must first say no to the corrupt ideal of sacrifice. One must reject as unspeakably evil any morality that demands sacrifices, whether the sacrifice of your values to the misfortune or irrationality of others, or the sacrifice of their values to your misfortune or irrationality. Whether it be a relative demanding an attention he has not earned, or the latest healthcare scheme from Washington, promising to give us something for nothing by soaking the rich, one must say no. The moment the good requires victims, it ceases to be good. To win one's moral independence, one must uphold the individual's moral right to exist, beginning with one's own. You have the right to exist, a moral right to your own life and to trying to achieve happiness within its days and years. No one has a moral right to demand that you gain his permission to exist by slavishly ministering to his needs and protecting him from his own shortcomings. No one has a claim on your life. The moment someone waves his pain or need or failures around, proclaiming that it is these that entitle him to your values, he removes himself from any moral consideration. The Founding Fathers grasped politically that no one gains a right to your life by virtue of his real or alleged superiority. Neither priest nor king nor aristocrat nor the majority gains a right to your life by virtue of superior social position, mystic visions, ancestors, wealth, or numbers. What must now be grasped morally is that no one gains a claim to your life by virtue of his real or alleged inferiority. No one gains a moral claim to your life by virtue of his inferior wealth, power, happiness, intelligence, ability, knowledge, or judgment. What this means is that your moral stature is not at the mercy of someone who has failed or perhaps could not even be bothered to provide for his own health care or retirement. So politically, the Declaration of Independence taught us to reject the notion of undeserved serfdom. Morally, Atlas Shrugged teaches us to reject the notion of unearned guilt. Now, in place of unearned guilt, one should embrace the nature of one's existence as an individual human being, a being that must seek and create values in order to remain vibrantly alive. This is the precondition of self-esteem, to seek in all things the best for oneself. To embrace life is to recognize that the whole act of valuing arises in the context of one's own life and the need to make it go well. From a child choosing a toy, to a teenager choosing a friend, to an adult choosing a career or a lover or a form of government, the need to do so arises from the same question: what will advance my life? The precondition of self-esteem is to refuse, as the Founding Fathers refused, to settle for anything less than the ideal in one's life. And to this quest for the ideal, morality, properly conceived, is an indispensable aid. Its task is to teach you fully what to value and how to value. Its task is to teach you how to achieve life and happiness. Atlas Shrugged accordingly offers a new conception of the moral ideal, a new conception of the sacred and the exalted, far different from that of the Sermon on the Mount. Fundamental to Atlas's new moral code are the actual requirements of life and happiness. Central to its new ideal, therefore, are the virtues of thought, production, and trade. Thought, production, and trade. Atlas Shrugged is a hymn to man's mind. Every value that man has achieved had to first be discovered by some individual mind. From picking fruits, to hunting with spears, to planting crops in order to harvest them only months later. From the invention of theater as a source of enjoyment and emotional fuel, to the discovery of perspective in painting, to the creation of music, and then of more and more complex harmonies and forms of composition. From the identification of the laws of motion to the formulation of the laws of logic. From the discovery of germs and antibiotics to the invention of the transistor and the computer. For each of these steps, some mind had to figure it out. This is the source of human life and happiness. To worship life, therefore, means to worship man's intelligence. And if it is one's own life that one seeks, then the development of one's intelligence becomes the most fundamental of goals. To learn to think, to make connections, and to see farther than one has so far seen. To learn to think carefully, systematically, logically, objectively. To learn to see the full implications of one's ideas. All this becomes the most important of tasks. The scope of one's knowledge and the power of one's thinking will dictate the success or failure of all one's value pursuits, from earning a university degree to succeeding as a doctor or computer programmer or CEO, to raising kids who are competent, well-behaved, and independent. For Ayn Rand, as for the Founding Fathers, abstract thought is not a game in which one cynically marvels at the alleged paradoxes of the universe. Thought, abstract thought, is purposeful. It demands a serious dedication to one's life. It demands the honesty of a mind seeking all the facts, because these and only these will dictate its conclusions about how to act. It demands the independence of a mind reaching its own verdict, no matter how many people say otherwise. It demands the integrity of a mind committed to acting on its own considered judgments. Thought is purposeful. Thought is selfish. Thought is for the sake of production.